Class, once again, this is the fifth session I think that we are doing on evaluation of training. That is your paper 7 in the ISD diploma. And friends, if you remember last time we studied about the types of assessment, the formative and summative assessments. Formative assessments are those where it is the assessment is informally done, like feedback, or by just throwing questions at people or allowing people to discuss things. This is a kind of assessment where people are free and they're not under pressure, and the trainer and the participants, both of them, can gauge how much they have learned. And in the summative assessment, you declare pass or fail. So that is one kind of assessment that is there. And then we talked about the methods of obtaining information, and we discussed a number of methods, like the questionnaire, the interview, the observation, and so on. So today I will be starting with a very common method which all of you might have already have experience of, and might have seen or administered yourself, or might have been involved in it, and that is the questionnaire. So today's session we will start with constructing of questionnaires, and I will just share my screen with you. Then you will be able to, we will move from there. So, So today's starting point is constructing questionnaires, and it is an important activity for any evaluator because this is the most commonly used method of obtaining information, and it is used almost everywhere. You can use it during the training, before the training, after the training, at the job place, for training needs analysis, for performance, measuring performance, and so on. At different places, it is the most versatile thing that you will be using. And the activities involved in constructing the questionnaires are like this. First of all, you need to decide whether you really want to use a questionnaire or some other method would be suitable. What would be suitable? At many places, interview would be suitable. It depends upon what the level of people is to whom you are administering this thing, this instrument. And then the real activity is constructing it. Constructing it means like thinking about the questions, what kind of questions should be there, and how to frame them. They should be politically acceptable, and so on. And then really administering them. Would sending through email would be better, or going personally and getting it filled, asking people questions and filling it yourself? So these kinds of things are to be looked at. And then the most important thing of all these three activities is interpreting the results of the questionnaire. Now, what do you conclude after you get the information? That is the most important thing, of course, and it will definitely depend upon the types of questions you are asking, and whether you are asking the right people or not. So let us look at them one by one. Now, how to decide whether we should use a questionnaire or not? Actually, it is deciding upon general areas, like what kind of information is required and how much. If the information is much more, and like it will be running into a number of questions, then it is better that you have a questionnaire instead of writing your questions and interviewing people, or observing people on specific items. Then identify a specific problem, why this questionnaire is needed, and what is the problem. So your questions will be framed around that problem only. And then checking out that a questionnaire is suitable, and whether the people will be giving you response or not. Let us have a look at that. and how to check that a questionnaire is suitable or not. The first thing you should do about is, if you want to ask a definite set of questions, and whether you want to give time for to them for a reply. Respondents should get some time to respond, think, and respond to the questions. Then it could be that there are more respondents. For example, you have to ask questions for 100 people or more. It will not be possible to go and interview everyone. So it is better to send them the questionnaire, maybe through email, or even physical copies can be given. Then the respondents are widely geographically dispersed. They're in different cities. They're all over the country or maybe international. Then it will be very difficult for you to get them, interview them or have a telephonic calls or something. So it is better to administer the questionnaire. And it's quite possible that the level of people that you are asking questions may not be having such skills of reading and writing. They may not be able to understand your questions. So your questions have to be framed accordingly, and also you need to think about that, about those respondents. You have the time to construct a good instrument before you do that, before you obtain the information. You should have the time to do that before you use it. And then you have the production facilities available. Like, you don't have a problem with typing, reprography, and you have adequate paper. Like, somebody is there to finance it, or the organization is able to provide you this, then you'll be able to do. And you have considered the problem of omissions. There may be like people who may not be comfortable. They don't understand a particular question. Then they would skip that question. They wouldn't know how to answer. So consider this before administering the questionnaire, whether it is suitable or not. Naturally, it would require reframing the question if that happens. And you have considered the problem of response rate. Like, you gave the questionnaire, you sent email, you kept on sending reminders, but people are not responding. Questionnaire, people don't find, like, if sometimes the questionnaire is very long, more than 2 pages long, then people feel very lazy to fill it up. They don't have the time to fill it up sometimes, and they don't take it very seriously too. So that is the thing that you have to see too. Then how should we construct a questionnaire? You must be able to choose the right format for questions. By right format, I mean, should it be small questions? Should it be big ones? Should you have open questions? Should you have closed questions? Then identify the frame of reference for the target people. Then do they really link themselves with it, connect with it? And you should be good at writing the questions. In fact, you should take help from people and from the management themselves, and get your questionnaires checked before you really finalize it. And test the questions on some people so that you get an idea whether they are able to understand this or not. And if you require, then revise them, revise the questions, and retesting the questions if necessary. Like, some of the questions were ambiguous to people, although you were clear in your mind what you meant, but other people didn't understand. Then you reframed it, and then retest the questions if necessary and revise it. Then you must have a summary sheet also, design a summary sheet, and organize the questionnaire. By organizing, I mean that it should have a logical sequence, simpler and general. You can have a general to specific approach, and organize it so that the problem can be easily handled. Now, choosing the right format is very important, because what my experience tells me is people don't like to write much. Like, they don't even have the time to write 2 or 3 sentences. What they prefer is either tick mark something or choose from a different from one or two options. It depends upon the level of people and the kind of time they have. So you can have open response questions. They are used for more complex questions, like it gives them freedom to the way in which they answer. They are like questions which make them think. And adults, typically don't want words to be put in their mouth. They want to give their own opinions. They want to say what they think. So for middle management or higher ups, it is a good way to give open response questions. And then you have the closed response questions, where you answer either in yes or no or true or false, just simple questions. And the respondent has a choice, like he can choose the options from the questionnaire. This is an example of response questions, open response questions. For example, you're simply asking them the opinion. In your opinion, what new skills did you acquire through carrying out this project? Or what are the new skills? How will you apply the skills that you have learned in this training when you go back to your job? So that gives them a big idea, like they can talk about it, what they think. They can even talk about their action plan and so on. You give space to them to write. Closed questions have only one answer. Either it is yes or no, or is it true or false. In answering these questions, the respondent has to choose. Like he's bound by these two things. And you can of course add something, like if people are feeling uncertain, you can even add that concept. Then you have, in this you have two-way questions, true, false, yes, no. You have multiple choice questions, which you might have come across a number of times. If you wrote any competitive exams, that is the most common way to write questions. And then you have something called rating scales and ranking scales. So here the respondent is asked to place a number of statements in order, and in rating scales, the respondent has to rate the thing, the object or the training or the lesson or the faculty. So two-way questions are like this. You can have a better approach if you add an uncertainty element also. Third choice, I don't know. You can do that. But there will be difficulty, like many people may choose this and it will be difficult for you to analyze it later. But that can be done if you think it is important. And then there's an example, like you can tick in such questions. People can tick in any of these boxes. Will you choose another project based on computer assisted learning? He can say yes or no, or he can say do not know. This is a simple question. That is why. Multiple choice questions have a number of choices, like 4 or 5 choices. And for example, did you enjoy the style of learning? The participant can put a tick in any of these: not at all, little, fairly, quite a lot, very much, and so on. So this is an example of multiple choice questions. Then we have something which is called rating scales, and it is used mostly in informal settings, and it is of two kinds. Rating scales can be of two kinds. One is called the Likert scale. Likert scale is after the name of the author, and here what we do is we give them a list of statements, and the participant has to, or the delegate has to, make a judgment on that, like whether it is acceptable to that person or not. And the scales may vary from simple alternatives, like you can have only two choices, agree or disagree, or you can have a point scale, which is having a slow graduation from 0 to 10, or it could be any 7 or 10 scale, any scale. Normally the scales used are 3 to 6 point ones. Even numbered scales force a choice, And but if you have a uh, odd number one, then it is like you can have a central tendency. People may choose a neutral position. Okay, so it's better, like I don't know whether it is better or not, but I mostly make the even numbered scales, and then you don't have a central tendency, and the people have to choose, either they agree or they disagree. So you can have in between things also, strongly disagree or not so much agreeing, and those kinds of things. And then you have semantic differential scale. They are used for general reaction to a person, object, or materials it is focusing on. It allows strong opinions, but of course you have to be careful. Don't use bad language, like it should be appropriate. And you can use paired objectives, like two opposing thoughts, two opposing thoughts written on either side of the page with 5, 6, or 7 possible positions in between. So before we go on to administering the questions, I want to share with you these two things. I want to show you an example of the Likert scale and the semantic differential scale. So just give me a few seconds. I'll just bring it for you. This is a PDF. This is a Word file. This is the Likert scale, and you have a list of statements on which people make judgments, and it could be any number. Like here you can see the 5 numbered scale. This is a 5 numbered scale, and
Ma'am, it's not visible.
Is it?
Yeah. I think you
do
have
the
to
Word
close
files
the presentation and show.
You
have to close.
Right. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'll do that. I just forgot.
All right.
Yeah, I will. So I think I will have to stop sharing this and then start sharing that, probably. Share the screen, and yeah. Here. Now, is it visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
So, friends, this is the Likert scale, and so you can have a 10 point or even 7 point or 6 point. The one example that I'm showing you is the 5-point scale, and the question that is being asked is, you can either put a ring or you can put a tick mark or a cross. That is up to you. Like you can choose any options. Ring O, one of the numbers, you can put O's here, or you can just put the tick mark. In your questionnaire you can make it, like if you have different sections in your questionnaire, in one you can have tick mark, in one you can have cross, and so on. So the question here you are asking is, how relevant do you think this topic is to your everyday job? Now somebody may think it was very useful, very relevant, and quite relevant gets a 4 rating. 5 rating is for very relevant, quite relevant is 5, relevant is 3, a little relevant is 2, and not at all relevant is 1. So these two are showing that, last two are showing that it's not so good. And from here, relevant means yes, it was okay, and quite relevant means it was very good, but they may be having some doubt. So the person can take care, or they can even put crosses or anything. Now, semantic differential scales are a little different. They have strong opinions, and it represents a general reaction to the person, object, or materials. It could be done on the faculty also, and we should be very careful while making them, because we shouldn't be like not inappropriate content should not be there. And it is based on paired objectives, like on the one side you will have one word, and on the other you will have an opposite word, and they could be positive and negative adjectives, uh, and this can be, I will just show you one example. They can be 7 position scale, 10 position scale, or any position scale, and depending upon how much you want to do on this. Then what we do is we give here a score and we add up the score later. Hmm? So you have to tick one box each on each scale. Like the question asked is the help and advice given to tackle the project was informative or uninformative. You see, these are opposite words. It was boring or it was interesting. It was superficial or it was profound. It was helpful or unhelpful. So these are opposite pairs of adjectives that you use, and you can ask people to tick. So if you have an odd number of scale, then for example, the one in front of you, it has a 7-point scale, then people have a choice to be neutral about it. And what we do is, if this has been filled up by 10 people or say 20 people, then we count the numbers, like this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, how many informative ones you have, how many fours you have, how many fives you have, and so on, and then analyze them. So this is how the semantic scale is administered. And I will just go back to the PowerPoint. And so, yeah. So I think you have some idea about the Likert scale and the semantic differential scale. And then we have to administer the questionnaire. That is the next step. So it is actually, if you want a fair answer and you don't want people to be affected, then it is better to have a, allow them to not write their names. Let it be like nobody knows who has written it. So actually it is, if you're very serious about it, then it is the responses that matter and not the person's name. So, and of course, if you, like, there's a delicate balance. It depends. Sometimes people do feel that if they write their name, then they will be like, they will give response. Some people otherwise they skip. If no name is given, they want to skip writing the in the questionnaire. So that is a balance you have to strike and see what kind of people are there, and then ask them to write either the names or ask them to keep anonymous. Now the last step is the interpreting of the results of the questionnaire. And actually there's not a set formula to do this. And but you can choose different ways. And the analysis, when you are doing the analysis or interpreting the results of the questionnaire, then does the information match up with their objectives or what they expected to find? This is what you have to ask, and the analysis will tell you. And can the information be compared with a similar or related study or investigation? Or if you have a benchmark, does the information appear complete enough to aid deciding courses of action? So, like, was my questionnaire good enough to give me a complete information so that action can be taken? Then you have to prepare a report and submit the report. In the next session, probably we will be doing an EOT report also, how to write a report, and we'll see that. Now we come to the next part of our thing, this evaluation course, and that is
Ma'am,
the
can I
model.
ask a question on the previous?
Sure.
Ma'am, in the initial slides you had mentioned we can test a questionnaire and retest. And
Right.
there were 2 times it was mentioned. So can you give an example on which cases they have to be retested while framing the questionnaire?
Look, you have made a questionnaire, you have thought about it, and you talk to the management, and they thought that more or less it is okay. But now when you go into the field, say there are 100 employees, okay, and you want to administer the question on them. So before giving it to all the people, it is better to test it on at least 3-4 people on a sample whom you can be frank with whom you can be like you're a little familiar, and give them the questionnaire, and see how they respond. It is quite possible that a few of them would say that this question is ambiguous. If they have found it ambiguous, then it is likely that other people also may find, or they may say that this question is not relevant to us or our situation. So I'm not saying that that is the criteria you should decide upon, but it is better to test it. And then you reframe the question and test it. It is not necessary you test it again on the same set of people. You can test it on other people also. Then you will get the real, like 3-4 people you can take, or it depends upon the size of the population, huh? Or maybe you can, if it is say 1000 people, then maybe you have a classroom of 25-30 people and you test on them, huh?
Right.
So
And,
that is
ma'am, any ideal set that we should not exceed a certain number of questions in a regular format? I mean, is there any benchmark to this or something?
I have not come across that. I will have to check.
Okay.
I think it depends upon the situation. Like you have to strike a balance, Arpita. Like it should be it if it is say 4 pages and it has more than 100 questions, people will become bored by the end. But sometimes you have to keep them to eliminate false reporting. For example, if it is for a psychological thing, say you are doing it for some psychological outcome, you're looking for that, then you have to frame same questions in different ways at different places, so that the response you get is like more or less similar. You will have to eliminate those questions where the response to the later question is not matching with the earlier question. So it depends upon the scenario, it depends upon the people on whom you are administering the questionnaire. If it is a lower level functionaries and they're not able to read so much, then too many like if it has too many big sentences, then it will be a problem for them. And you should have smaller sentenced questions and all that. And so I don't think there's a limit. I haven't come across that.
But ma'am, if it's an examination, if a questionnaire is used as an examination, does it become a summative evaluation then, assessment?
Definitely, you are going to declare pass and fail, then yes, it is summative.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Shall we move ahead?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let us talk about the models of evaluation. Actually, different authors have come forth and put forward some methods like how you can do evaluation, and that is what models are. They are providing you ways to do evaluation. In the like second session, or maybe the second session, I talked about Mark Easterby Smith model. And although that is not in your curriculum, but it gives you the purposes for which we do evaluation. And similarly, there's a Hamblin model, AC Hamblin model, that came in 74. And then we have a Kirkpatrick model. Actually, the AC Hamblin model and Kirkpatrick model and Mark Easterby Smith model is widely used with a combination. Like people don't use it separately. We will use only the Kirkpatrick model. It is not like that. People generally try to use a combination of them. But the most widely used model these days is the Kirkpatrick model. And in most of the organizations, private, government, in the West, mostly the Kirkpatrick model is used. So let us first have a look at the Kirkpatrick model. And it was actually by, his name is Professor Donald Kirkpatrick. He first published the ideas of evaluation, and he gave us a 4-level model in 1959. But later he himself consolidated it and improved upon it, and he published it in his book called Evaluating in 1994. And actually, if you see, this is, even today, this is the most commonly used. model. It is not the same as it was earlier. It has been modified, and people have actually changed it according to their convenience. And later, when he died, his son and his mother and his wife, Wendy, they reviewed and updated the actual theory by introducing New World Kirkpatrick model as an update. And what we see now is the update. And it's the most useful model by far. And it's like this. The what you're seeing on screen, it has different levels. As I mentioned, there are 4 levels. And we will have to go from bottom to top. It is inbuilt in this model that you have to do correctly the activities at first level and hierarchically proceed from level 1 to 2 and then 3 and then 4. So your results will be depending upon the earlier levels, like the results of second level and first level will impact the level 3. And even result level will be impacted by all the activities that are happening here in the lower levels. So at level 1, Kirkpatrick said that we try to measure the reaction. What is the reaction of the participants? And its name is reaction level. First level is reaction level. And did the learners enjoy the training? Enjoy is a very small word here, but it has a big connotation. Like enjoy means did they, unless they found it useful, they wouldn't enjoy it. Unless they took interest in this, only then they will enjoy it. Then learning. Second level is the learning level. And did the learning transfer occur? Like what they started with, the objectives. Even in the reaction level, it is important to identify first the objectives and then match whether the learners really felt satisfied. Did the objectives have been met? Did they enjoy the training? Was the food okay? Was the implementation okay? Was the delivery okay? Was the training material okay? Were the movies or PowerPoint, whatever was shown, was relevant or not? And then learning, testing the learning here. You put the tests also to people, formative, summative assessments. Did the learning transfer occur? This is what is checked at the learning level, which is the second level of Kirkpatrick. And then comes the job behavior level, which is, although here I'm showing you impact, but it is in the initial model, it is called the job behavior level. Later on, it has changed to impact. What impact did the training have on the behavior of the participants? I remind you that behavior here does not mean the physical behavior. It means the 3 aspects in the behavior. The 3 aspects of the behavior are the knowledge, the skill, and the attitude of the employees. So did the training change that? The knowledge or the skills or the attitude? So behavior is composed of these 3 things. And the ultimate level, which is the results level, this name has been kept intact, and only the behavior levels name has been changed into impact. That is like synonymous. You can say the behavior level or the impact level. These are synonymous. And results is, did the training influence the performance of the organization as a whole per se? Not just the individuals, the whole organization. And so these are the things that are required to be like activities which check the results here, activities that would check the behavior of the participants. And if you look at it closely, it will be these 2 levels are more at the organization, And the first two levels are more at the institution or the learning level. So in a nutshell, this is the Kirkpatrick level. Let's have a look at it. Level 1 is the reaction level, and reaction is actually to what extent did the delegates react. Was the training good or bad? Favorably to the training course. Level 2 is to what degree did the delegates acquire the intended knowledge, skills, and attitude as set out in the course objectives based on their participation in the training. So the tests, all the formative, summative tests, feedback, everything would be here. And it is before the training, during the training, and after the training too. For level 3, we are focused on behavior. To what degree did the delegates apply what they have learned on the course when they are back at the work? So this is an organizational scenario. And level 4 is the result. To what degree did the targeted outcomes occur? Now, targeted outcomes have to be the ones that were identified in the training needs analysis. We should have a plan that this is what to be achieved and whether they have been achieved or not. And so to what degree did targeted outcomes occur as a result of the training course and the subsequent work-based reinforcement of the training? Actually, it is very difficult to separate the two, whether it is because of the training that the performance or the outcomes have been achieved, or some other contributing factors were also there. So taking out these two things will be a little difficult. So at reaction level 1, we generally ask what is the number one goal of your training, like to create instruments for reaction 1, level 1, obtaining information or administering the reaction questionnaire. Then what is the number one goal of your training? Has that been achieved or not? So 3 metrics will help you to decide how well the training was received. First is how engaged the audience was during the training. Were they really interested? Were they doing exercises? Were they involved in the training? How much contribution did they put in and how actively did they do it? And how was their overall reaction to your training? So not only you can get feedback on the training, it would also help you greatly to improve your own next training if you're a trainer. So you get the feedback from the reaction, and this is because you can easily identify significant topics that you might have missed by any chance. And of course, the outcome of this level is like you might need to redesign your course, you need to change some material, or maybe the way of the faculty or the involvement, like introduce some exercise where people feel more involved and so on. So the questions you can ask: do you think the training was successful? Your questionnaire will be built about this. All what I'm showing you is a too simplistic thing, but you can build your questions around this. Would you recommend this training to others in your unit? If anything, what would you change about this class and why? And in your opinion, what are the strong and weak points of this class? Did the training activities, exercise engage you? What could be the 3 most valuable stuff that you learned by attending this training? The number 3 is just a random number. You could even say 1, just list 1 most valuable stuff that you have learned. 1 point which you would, or 1 takeaway, or you could have more than that also. Just list the takeaways that you're taking from this training. How good or bad were the venue? This is also important because then you will be, because sometimes people would write just, it wasn't a good training, it wasn't a good experience. If you don't have specific questions about venue, then you cannot differentiate whether the training was bad because of the bad venue or really the delivery in the training, the materials, the class and all that, the learning that happened. How good or bad was the presentation style in your opinion? From this training program, how much do you think you can apply at your job? So these are the questions that you should be asking. And how much and what kind of support might you need when applying the learned knowledge at your job? So, like, this is a fear that participants generally have when they go back. If the trainer is able to elicit this information and compiles it, they can have a word with the line managers or the people at the organizational level, and they can have a rapport with them and tell them that what people feel, that when, although I've learned these things, but maybe my boss will not allow me, or maybe I will be transferred at another place, or maybe he may say that I'm not handling this kind of work and still I have undergone the training. So the real transfer of learning would happen only when the superiors know what they think, that could there be some factors that would stop the participants from transferring their knowledge, learning to the job work. So at level 2, learning level 2, we can ask these questions. What trainees have not learned from your training, or whether they learned something or they did not learn something. And there's one new and innovative addition in the New World version of the Kirkpatrick level. It also measures how the trainees think they can do things differently, how confidently they feel in that aspect, and what the source of their motivation is. So this has been added, and these questions can be framed around that to check the learning, how much learning has happened. So as a result, you can assess how the training has imparted skills and knowledge to them, and this self-confidence and determination. We also call it the entry behavior and the exit behavior. How was the participant when he entered the training, and how did he feel when he left the training? So there must be a change in that. So as a rule of thumb, it is good to evaluate these areas before and after the training. And to do it effectively, keep your training objectives measurable. Now your question might be, what is measurable? Like, you must be able to list something. For example, if you're teaching them about, say, LTC rules, then your objective should be the participants will be able to list the different rules that are attracted while framing the claims. So that is one. Or if this is a training about, say, a concept, understanding a concept. For example, in a behavioral training, you are trying to explain the Johari window to them. So you can have, the main objective could be the participants will be able to list the main features of the Johari window. If you write the objective as the participants will be able to understand the Johari window, you will not be able to measure it, because then your questions, you cannot frame a question to measure the understanding, but you can frame the questions to measure whether they can list it or not. Because if you ask them objective questions and they are able to answer, then you will be able to measure them. So a good way to do this is to have a conversation or quick question answer session with your trainees. And this would help you assess their knowledge level, attitudes, and skill level as well. And use formative or summative assessment at this place. You can have objective test items, or you can have subjective tests. You can ask them to write essays. You can ask them to write some paragraphs or short notes, or easier, what I feel is easier is the objective test items, but making objective test items is a difficult task. So, like, to check their understanding, it's really difficult to frame good objective test items. Then at the behavior level, level 3, this is now called the impact level also. Like, this synonymous, as I mentioned earlier, behavior level can also be said to be the impact level. This level tests how much trainees apply the training received to their job, and focus on developing processes that boost, encourage, and reward positive behavioral changes. And what is required for them? Required drivers. If a trainee uses the newly learned skill effectively, then highlight them and appreciate her for it. Actually, if people learn and come back to job, and then they try to apply their knowledge, there could be an atmosphere where it is not encouraged, or people may take them like uh, very lightly, that yes, they have come to learn this. Unless we encourage them and appreciate the work they are doing, that is a very important part that has been added. And these are called the required drivers to apply that knowledge. So measure the change in behavior, and as I mentioned earlier, at this level it takes some time, like it cannot be done just in a day or so. If the person has come back from training yesterday, you can't test him today. It will give him at least 3 months to settle down, start using his knowledge. Actually, by applying the knowledge in the workplace, you learn even more, and you learn the practical aspects also. So generally a 3 months time is considered to be appropriate. Then conducting interviews and observations, these are the most effective tools here, but we saw other tools also earlier. So you can use a number of tools here for measuring. Most effective are interviews and observation. And now the results level, the ultimate level of the Kirkpatrick. It is regarded as the primary goal of the training program. Like, why did the training started, or why did we send the people to training? And naturally, it has to be linked with the training needs analysis. Even if the training needs analysis has not been done, it should be very clear what you want from the training to happen. So, and if it is documented, that would be a great help. So you determine the overall success of the training based on the critical business objectives. Like if your expenditure has reduced, then it is an indicator that the training has been successful. Your return on investment is much more than greater return, then that is successful. Better quality of products, like people are making better products, they are able to sell more. More work efficiency in employees, or sales have increased, that is also an indicator of a good training, that the results having been achieved, that shows that the results. Actually, the indicators are in the reports of the organization, their financial statements, and the various reports they gave, that is there. This at this level, it is the activities are most time consuming, and it is a costly process. At job behavior level, I mentioned 3 months, but I'm not mentioning any time here because it will take a lot of time. Like, a big workforce has been prepared, trained, and a lot of time has passed. Only then you can really identify the results that are coming from the training. It is quite challenging to predict which advantages, outcomes, and results are associated with the training. It could be, can it be contributed to different factors? For example, a change in the environment, or a change in the policy, or a change in the demography of the organization. Could it be due to that? You need effective ways to evaluate the outcomes in the longer run. So you need here ways to do that, and it's really tough to do this. You need to hire outside experts. Results must be communicated to all stakeholders. Actually, if you do not involve any stakeholders, having the results is meaningless. So this should be shared with other stakeholders also. And stakeholders, most prominent is the Funding agency, the public at large, is the biggest stakeholder to whom you are giving your services or you're selling your products. Your customers are the stakeholders. And if your sales have increased, that how the, so a lot of surveys, questionnaires would be used in this. The tools would be that to do that, and surveys, questionnaires, interviews, things like that. So there is some strategy also involved in this. Actually, although I showed you it upside down, like the reaction level is the first and mostly done. Like the size of the chart that you saw earlier is also indicative of how much people are using it. So actually the reaction level is the level which people are mostly using. Hmm? And many people are using, and sadly at many places in most of the organization, the only evaluation is done at the reaction level. And then learning, of course, at many places we test the learning also of people. For the behavior level, it is much less than the reaction level and the learning level. And results level, I don't think in organizations in India, any organizations would be doing it. Even at job behavior level, there would be hardly 15 to 16% people or organizations who would be doing it. So how to have a strategy about using the level 4 is, actually you should first define the final results, what you really want for the organization to happen. It should be matching with its organizational goals, and then break this down to behavior that will drive the results. What kinds of behavior should be there in our employees which will get you these results, so that needs to be uh, identified. And then finally break those down to learning objectives that will drive. If a if a set of people want to we need a set of people to show this kind of behavior. By behavior, again, I mean knowledge, skill, and attitude. Okay, so if we want a particular set of employees to show a particular behavior, then what is the learning they require? Do they require any learning for that, or are there things that they need to unlearn? This we have to find. Do they need to be like, what is the environment in our organization? Does it deter them from using new skills, or do we encourage people sharing their achievements? Do we encourage people if they are innovative, if they're found to use their skills or their knowledge? There is something called tacit knowledge which is there in the minds of the people. Are we documenting it? So can we have a documentation on that, and that can be used for by other employees also? So these are the things that we need to look at. And then this helps in prioritizing the goals and what we actually want. What is our goal? And the first goal, the second goal, and the third goal in the right priority. And ultimately, what do we really want the outcomes to be? And what do we really want the ultimately what training should be provided? So let us look at the outcomes now. What do we get from level 4? What do we get from level 4 is high level of motivation. Like, we should be able to motivate our employees. If the organization is performing well, you are able to give good bonus or incentives, and production is rising, the image of the organization is good. People also associate themselves with the organization. Oh, I'm working with this organization, and that is a pride for them. So motivation, reduced work lags and procrastination. People are enthusiastically taking initiative. huh? More sales, that is an indicator. And higher level of customer service or customer satisfaction. Hmm? Then greater and more efficient production. these are only some outcomes. It may not be necessary that actually, if you look at the organization and its environment, like how is it faring with the competitors? Hmm? So that is also important from the point of view of the organization, and that is one outcome of the level 4. Higher workers retention and reduced workers uh, complaints. So it not only workers complaints, the customer complaints also, whether they have reduced or not. Hmm? So naturally this customer satisfaction will tell you that. So, but there are some challenges in using Kirkpatrick's model. It's a very good model, but it is that all levels may not be relevant for all the trainings. For example, if you're doing the training on prevention of sexual harassment at workplace, then you're not bothered about the results much. Like, of course, if your number of complaints are lessened, if you have an effective IC in the organization, and people are like if you're able to measure the level of sexual harassment that is happening in the organization that has reduced, it is really difficult. Like you may not be your evaluation may be restricted only to level 2. It is quite possible in many organizations, and it is difficult to choose the right metrics and get the right results at level 4. This is really difficult, and to overcome this, we should involve the stakeholders, as many people as possible, because if you look at level 4, the number of stakeholders will be much more. If we progress from level 1 to level 4, the number of stakeholders increases. The complexity of activities also increases. The number of people who will be involved in doing those activities will increase. The cost will increase, the time will increase. So it is like involve the stakeholders. Public is also a very big stakeholder at many places. The political milieu or the people in the governance, they are also stakeholders. And the metric should drive business decisions and also determine the value of the program for those who funded it. And then check the relevancy of the metric and see if the performance involved are inside the scope of the project, and carefully review how the metric can be connected to the key performance indicators. So every organization has some key performance indicators, and we should have a link between that. Then only you can overcome this challenge. Always ensure that there's enough data available to draw conclusions. Here, data volume is important for data integrity and accurate insights. And a very good tool to use here in at level 4 is the management information system. That is actually where the information is stored, and you can do queries and take out the data according to your needs, and analyze it, see the trends, and do a number of things on that. So having a management information system is a very, very important thing to overcome challenges of the Kirkpatrick model and have an objective metrics here. So now we come to the next model. I will quickly go through this. We will do only the Cairo model here today. Next time we will be doing the return on investment, because I want to share some devote some time to process of return on investment also. In one of the sessions, somebody had asked me, ma'am, how is this done? So I will be spending time on that too. So let us look at the Cairo model. It was developed by Warburg and Brackham, and it was published in their book called Evaluation of Management Training. And Cairo actually stands for context, input, reaction, and output. Sometimes people use output as outcome also. Although output and outcome are two different words and mean different, but people do use it interchangeably. Output means when we are interested in how many number of people have been trained, for example, or how much product we are able to take out, how many complaints have been taken up or have been settled. But outcome means the result, the quality. When we're talking about the quality, we are talking about the outcome. Or how many people have been trained is not useful unless the quality of the training, the outcome of the training has increased the performance, isn't it? So when we're talking about outcomes, we are talking about the results. And when we're talking about the output, we generally talk about the numbers. But here in the Kaido model, I have seen that many authors use output as a synonymous with outcome. So don't get confused if you, at many places, you read outcome instead of output. Okay. So the Kaido model is specifically aimed at evaluating management training. So it is more concerned with management training, like the Kirkpatrick model. It is also a hierarchical model. That means that you need to first do the initial levels and then go on to the next levels. If you miss out the initial levels, the results of the superior levels or the next levels will not be satisfying or much useful. So that is how it goes. And let us look at them again. So context evaluation, input evaluation, reaction evaluation, these are the three levels that are concerned with evaluation. And the output or the outcome level is concerned with the results of the training. So now what is context evaluation here? Context means like what is the environment of the business, or where the business is located, how is it finding itself. By environment, I mean the political environment, the competitive environment, and so on. So we assess the operational situation that a business or organization finds itself in, and it helps in identifying training needs and objectives. The needs analysis gives us list of factors that may impact the training effectiveness. Naturally, when you're doing the needs analysis here, you will identify the performance gaps. If you remember, I showed you in the initial sessions the training needs analysis slide. What the training needs analysis aims at is to identify the gap between the desired performance and the actual performance. So this is what is being done here in the context evaluation. Mainly we do the needs analysis here. The needs identified are at three levels. They call it first the ultimate objective, to eliminate an organizational deficiency like low sale figure or low productivity or poor customer service or more complaints from the customer. This could be the ultimate objective, to eliminate this deficiency. Then how to eliminate it, how to attain it is done through intermediate objectives. They require a change in employees' work behavior. And what knowledge does he need? Does he need an attitudinal training to change it? And so that the objective of ultimate objective can be achieved. That is what done in this. Then the immediate objectives. Like if you look at it closely, we can really align it with ultimate objective is at the organizational level, intermediate objective is at the job level, and then immediate objective is the task level, acquiring new skills and knowledge as a result of the training or changing employees' attitudes and then behavior. So this is done at three levels. You can be doing it at simultaneously, or you can just identify. If you are just doing it at the organizational level, then you need to first find out that, and then change in behavior also you need to do that. So one by one you will be doing it, and like you will have to do all the three levels. You can't do just one level here. That is what I meant. And then we have something called input evaluation, that is the I in the Kaido model. So choosing the best training intervention for eliminating or for achieving our ultimate objective, which would be the best training. So best possible training methods or techniques. Would it be better to have a simulation, or would it be better to have it at the workplace, or we should send people to some other place and get it done? Maybe there is expertise available somewhere else. Then evaluate design, whether the design of the training is okay or not, whether the planning done was okay or not, management and delivery of the training course. These are all have to be evaluated, and then analyze the organization's resources and determine these resources can be best used to achieve the desired objectives. So in input evaluation, we first see whether the training intervention, what is the best training intervention, and then evaluate the designs, etc., planning, delivery, etc. And then we analyze the organizational resources. Where should they be allocated, and can they really help in achieving the desired objectives or not? So this is the thing that is done in input evaluation. Then the third level is a reaction evaluation. The training has happened, collecting the views and suggestions of the participants after the training they have received, and the reactions are collected on how the program went on, the content of the program, how it was approached, what was the delivery method, and so on. The value added, did they gain in anything? How was their knowledge scale attitude before the training and after the training? So, and information about it is to find ways to improve the training program. Like this information is used if you have information about the program content, approach, and value added, then this information will be used to improve the training program. Now the last level in this is the outcome or the output, you may call, some authors call it. Outcome is the more widely used term. Results of the training presented at 3 different levels here. So outcome means actually the results of the training, and it could be the immediate results, how the trainees got on and whether they managed to complete the training successfully. Was the training good enough for them? Then the intermediate, like after some time, they will take some time, and if there is any requirement of changes to this course design, or do we require some new training resource, do we need a different faculty, do we need a different institution where the materials needed were different. So then the third is the ultimate level or main goals for the organization, ones that have far reaching impact on the organization. They should be tallying with the main goals, and need not to be said that they should be matching with the needs analysis also that was done earlier. And outcomes can be measured at the learner level, the workplace level, the team or departmental level, and the business level. If you look at it closely, this is a little similar to the Kirkpatrick levels. The reaction level, the learner level, you are doing the outcomes. At the behavior level of the Kirkpatrick, workplace level, you are also doing the outcome, the team or the departmental level, and the business, that is the result level. So this is one example that is showing you how people are using Kaido model. Although this is only one specimen that I have brought to you, but people could be using it differently also. And I'll just share it with you. And this is the case of a software company which is specializing in management software and is looking to find ways to boost their sales. They want to sell more software. They decide to use the Kaido model and set their goals and choose the right training course. Now in the stage 1, what they will do the context evaluation. Here what they will do is they will determine the training needs and then develop objectives that help the company to meet its goal of improving sales. The ultimate goal is improving sales, and how to go about it, they determine the training needs. To identify the lack of product knowledge of their sales team, what they do is to The ultimate objective is to help improve software sales. Intermediate objective is to encourage sales staff to research the latest software updates and developments. And the immediate objective is to boost product knowledge among the sales team member. Then stage 4 is the outcome stage, and the learning and its impact on the employee's work. Have I missed some?
Stage 2.
Stage 3. Yeah. Sorry, stage 2. I just skipped that. Stage 2 is the input evaluation, and then we will analyze various training courses and weigh the costs and length of each one. Like there will be here the concept of efficient training comes in. If you remember in the second session, I showed you a graph in which if the lesser number of resources are used and effectiveness of training is the same as another training course, then such a training is called efficient training, and they will see whether the training is efficient or not. They will determine which course would be best to achieve their desired objectives. And the budget is also important. They have to see that. Then the stage 3 is the reaction evaluation. In this, the sales team members have to complete a survey or questionnaire. A questionnaire will be given to them, or survey may be done on them. And data from this evaluation would be used to help the company and to decide whether the training offers value for money and what changes.
Show the stage 4 once just to complete this the slide. Yeah.
You're through with the stage 2 and stage 3. Okay. This is stage 4.
Ma'am, so any questions related to this, we'll be handling it in the next session.
No, I can come up with the questions right now. But I'm sorry if my, are you able to hear me, Arpita?
Oh, no. I mean, ma'am, can you switch off your video and try, I mean, like just with your mic on?
All right.
Probably that's...
To stop the video and start only the mic. Is that so?
Yes, probably if you could, yeah.
Yeah, now. Are you